So there's this painting, and when you first look at it, it just looks kind of weird and creepy. But the more you find out about it, the more you realize how insane this painting is. Like the story behind it involves the church, witches' trials, a rich guy who thought it looked cool at his dinner parties, and an artist who might have genuinely lost his mind. Let's get into it. So the guy who painted this is Francisco Goya, a Spanish painter from the late 1700s. And before I tell you about the painting, you need to understand what's going on with this man because it changes everything. By the time Goya painted this, he had just survived something really scary. He got hit with this illness and nobody actually knew what it was. But this illness made him completely deaf. He couldn't hear anything, he lost his hearing overnight. He was gone completely. And that does something to a man. He went from being this confident, successful painter to this isolated man who wanted nothing to do with society. Couldn't hear anything, he couldn't have a conversation. He was just stuck inside his own head all day for the rest of his life. And what was inside his head was apparently pretty dark because after that illness, his whole vibe as an artist changed. Because his previous paintings was all about bright colors, nice portraits, colorful stuffs, happy stuffs. But after the illness, he was painting monsters, nightmares, witches, dark skies. Like his brain just flipped the switch and never flipped back again. Now here's where it gets interesting. Goya is living in Spain in the 1790s, and Spain at this time still has the Inquisition running. Now, if you don't know what that is basically a religious police force with the power to put you on trial, torture you, and execute you if they thought you were doing something against the church, like heresy, witchcraft, whatever they didn't like. And they were still very much active. This wasn't ancient history for Goya, this was happening around him, right in front of him. And Goya actually attended some of these trials. He sat there and watched women get accused of witchcraft, face horrific punishment, punishment which they weren't even meant to face, and it messed him up. You can tell because he kept coming back to this theme, which is the Inquisition, cruelty, over and over again in his work. So when he paints his witches, he's not just painting something spooky for fun. He's painting what he saw with his own two eyes. Something he had feelings about, strong ones. Okay, so now here's the point that gets a little wild. The painting wasn't something Goya just did for himself. He was hired to paint it by a guy called the Duke of Osuna. Now, the Duke of Osuna was one of the most powerful men in Spain at the time. He and his wife were huge fans of Goya, and they were big collectors of the spooky, scary artifact stuffs. They had this beautiful country house outside Madrid called La Alameda. I hope I pronounced that right. Basically, their fancy getaway villa, and they wanted to decorate it. So they commissioned Goya to paint a series of works for one of the rooms, a kind of witchcraft series, spooky, dramatic to hang on their walls. And here's the thing, this room was for where they were entertaining people. People would come over, have dinner, walk around, and just look at these nightmare paintings on the walls like it was totally normal. And Witch's Flight was one of those paintings. So just picture that you're a guest at the villa and you're just having a lovely evening, holding a cup of wine, walking around, and you saw this nightmare of a painting on the wall showing three witches feeding on a naked human body just hanging there at the dinner party. To be honest, I'll lose my appetite. Now let me actually describe what you're looking at. So in the middle of the painting, three figures are floating up in the air. They're wearing these long robes and these cone-shaped hats. The classic witch look basically. And they're holding up a naked man, like lifting him into the air. And the way it's painted is not totally clear if he's alive or dead, which is kind of the point. And on the ground below them, the two other men are absolutely terrified. One of them has his cloak pulled over his head, like he literally can't bear to look. The other one is crouched down, covering his ears, like whatever is happening above, I don't want to see, I don't want anything to do with it. He just covering his ears, hoping it to stop. And the whole sky is this dark, stormy, heavy grey that is just absolutely scary, which fits the scene perfectly. Now you're going to be asking yourself, what does this all mean? This is where it gets interesting. Because some people think Goya is just painting a scary witch scene, giving the Duke what he asked for. smoky oil for the villa, blah blah blah. But a lot of people think that there's something that's actually going on because Goya had seen the Inquisition up close. He'd watched women get accused of witchcraft and killed, which they obviously weren't guilty of, and he was furious about this. So maybe the real monsters in the painting weren't actually witches at all, but they are actually the church, the powerful people using fear to control everyone else. And the terrified men on the ground, regular people just trying to survive. Now he couldn't say that out loud, or that would have been extremely dangerous, but he could paint it and let people figure it out on their own. And this is where the story takes a turn. Because believe it or not, Witch's Flight is actually one of Goya's less disturbing works. Like it's basically a PG version of all his paintings combined. Like yeah, Goya painted some of the most horrific paintings you could ever think of. And this was a result of the deafness, his mental states, the isolation, they were all building up over the years, so his mental state was suffering. And eventually he moved into this house on the outskirts of Madrid. Now what did he do in that house? He started to paint on the walls of the house. Now today this became known as black paintings. And they make witches fly looks like a kid's painting because we're talking about giant paintings of a monster eating someone whole. Prowls or twisted screaming faces, two men beating each other with sticks while sinking in quicksand. Until this day, nobody fully understands why he did it. He never explained them, and they were only discovered after he had died. Some people think he was just processing the trauma, the Inquisition, all he has seen, and other things he genuinely wasn't doing well mentally at this point, which I kind of think is true. So that's all for today. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe. If there are any other paintings you want me to talk about, leave it in the comments. Bye.